We are back with some more NFL draft grading. I know it's been a little bit since I last posted, and the draft happened about 2 weeks ago at this point, but I need to get through all the divisions, even if it is way out of date. They talk about timeliness in the journalism industry. This is far from it. Who cares, though? I want to talk about these players and these prospects today. We have the NFC North, a conference or a division that I hold near and dear to my heart, as I will get out in front of it and say that I am a Lions fan, so I do have some more familiarity with them and their inner workings than I do the other front offices in the NFL, and so I feel a little bit better about my analysis of those teams than I do elsewhere, right? Now, the players, I feel great about my analysis of the players, and that's what we're here to talk about today. We're going to start it off with the Chicago Bears, and the Chicago Bears had quite an interesting draft. They really had a plan, with new offensive coordinator Ben Johnson and recently drafted number 1 overall pick Caleb Williams last year. And that plan was, get as much help for him as possible early on. And I think they did a pretty good job at doing so. I think Colston Loveland is, he was a top 10 player for me. He was the number 1 tight end in this class for me. And I think that what he brings to the Bears offense is going to immensely help the growth of Caleb Williams and the development of him under Ben Johnson. His ability to play in line, be a smooth route runner, block, catch the ball, be aggressive at the catch point, physical, has a little bit of run after catch, although I think that was one of his weaker areas. But you'll be able to ask him to do a bunch of stuff, and you can really run your offense through him if you want to. Now, the Bears won't. They have enough offensive weapons where they don't need to. It's just something that, it's nice to have. And you saw it with the Lions and Sam Laporta and what Ben Johnson was able to do with him. Colston Loveland is a little bit of a different mold, but the same caliber of player. And I think that taking him at number 10, a lot of Bears fans wanted Tyler Warren, but I think they absolutely made the right pick with Colston Loveland. And I think that they're going to look back on it in a couple of years and say, yeah, this is exactly what we needed to kickstart this new era and new regime. Next up, they went and got Luther Burden, and this was right around where I had Luther Burden in terms of my overall rankings. I think he was my 35th overall player. He was my wide receiver 5, if I remember correctly. I like Luther Burden, and that's not just, this isn't to say that I don't like Luther Burden. I just wasn't as high on him as some of the other people and draft analysts were. And a lot of it was because I just didn't think that he was a great separator before the catch point. I thought that his route running was a lot of movement. It never really got him anywhere. It felt like, just a lot of wasted movement is a better way to say it. And that's something that you can absolutely work on, and why I was still high on him, even given that he was a little bit lower in that area. But what he gives you after the catch with the ball in his hands is the best in this class at the wide receiver position. His ability to make people miss and break tackles, even at his size, was something that I considered borderline elite in this class, and why I like the move so much for Chicago, because he's one of those guys where you can just get him the ball in a multitude of different ways and let him work. He's not really much of a separator, in the grand scheme of things. Like, he doesn't do it well. I think down the field, he is able to create a little bit more separation than he is in the short to intermediate game. He's not exactly a burner. And I think that, you'll have to manufacture him some touches in that short range. But when you do, he's going to make guys miss, and he's gonna make you and your play call right a lot of the times. And that's kind of what you need with a young quarterback and a guy who's as creative as Ben Johnson is calling plays. And then they went and got Ozzie Trapillo, the tackle out of Boston College. And I like Ozzie. I just didn't like him this high. I had a 3rd-round grade on him. And I like the process of going out and getting a tackle to help Caleb Williams. And I think given the tackles that were on my board that were still available, fit-wise, he's better than, a Logan Brown that I had still available, just because Logan Brown's more of a wide zone type blocker, and Ozzie Trapillo can really, do what more of Ben Johnson wants to do. And then they went and got Shamar Turner with their 3rd second-round pick, and this was just 2 rounds too early for me. I had a solid, mid to late 4th round grade on Shamar Turner. They went and got him in the late 2nd. Like that, I just can't. That's a 1. It's about as bad as it gets in terms of, reaching with a top 62 pick or 64 pick. You just can't. You can't waste these picks on players that aren't going to, give you much return. And I just thought Shamar Turner, like the other Texas A&M defensive linemen, just you felt like I was missing a bunch. Like there was something missing when I was watching him, and for him, it just felt like he didn't do one thing really well. At least with Shamar Stewart, it was you could point at his running or his run defending ability and be like, yeah, that's something that gives him a high floor. With Shamar Turner, it was like, there are flashes of brilliance in the pass game and in the run game, but it was so inconsistent that it just felt like, and he doesn't really have the size profile. It felt like that you're just kind of hoping that he's going to be good. And I feel like with the top 64 pick, hoping a guy is going to be a decent player is just not good practice or process. And so, I gave that a 1. Then in the 4th round, they get Ruben Hippolyte, and this is another awful pick. When you talk about underwear warriors, that was Ruben Hippolyte. Like he was a 5-star recruit. Dealt with some injuries at Maryland, but like he never put it together. And you need to see some sort of production, especially at the linebacker position in college, in order for me to feel any good about you. Like linebacker is such a heady position that sure, the athleticism is great, but if you can't even produce at the college level, why should I trust you to produce at the NFL level? You can't just rely on athletic traits at the NFL at linebacker. You just can't. It's impossible. All of the elite linebackers in NFL history are like geniuses. When you watch Fred Warner play, when you watch Luke Kuechly play, there is a type of mental fortitude and mental acuity that those guys have that I just didn't see with Hippolyte. Like we're talking about a 7th round pick. I thought because of that athleticism, you could take a flyer on him. But to take an early day 3 pick for this guy, I really don't understand the process there. Zav Frazier is another guy where I thought, when you talk about traits, this guy has it. But it wasn't just that he had traits. He also showed the ability. He had pretty good production, but he showed the ability to go up and track the ball and stay in phase. It was just the consistency that you were looking for. He looks a little raw. But the flashes were there. And taking this type of guy, and I had a 5th round grade on him, taking this guy late in the 5th round to potentially be a number 1 corner, like this is the type of, based off of his athletic testing, his frame, and the way he moves, this is a future cornerback 1 if he's able to put all of it together. He's got all of the tools that you need to do it. Now, whether he does it or not is up to him. But he, I think taking a swing like this in the 5th round, based off of the value, is a good process there. And so this is what I'm talking about. The process all over the place. It felt like it was, early on we saw the vision, and then the Shamar Turner and the Ruben Hippolyte, it was like, okay, I'm not really sure what the idea was with these two guys. And then they go and get Zav Frazier. It's like, okay, I can see the vision there. And then in the 6th round, they take Luke Newman, a tackle out of Michigan State. I did not get to him. He was on my list of guys if I had a little bit more time that I was going to watch, but I unfortunately wasn't able to watch him. And then Kyle Monangai in the 7th round. I had a late 6th round grade on him, and so I thought this was a good spot for him. He's a reliable runner. He's not going to break defenses. He's not going to be a game breaker, but he is going to do everything you ask him to do, and he's going to do it at a solid level. He won't blow you away, but he's also not going to let you down. And so I thought Kyle Monangai was one of those running backs that was going to go later in the draft, but was going to be a very long tenured player in the league, given his ability to just be consistent. And then, so that brings us to a 2.13 overall for the Chicago Bears. And I mean, I just honestly didn't love their draft. I thought outside of the top 2 picks, there was, the vision was a little lost on me. I like this off Frazier pick later in the 5th round. I liked the Kyle Monangai pick. I just thought everything else, the other 3 picks were a little too early. Luther Burden was a good pick in my estimation. I think that Ben Johnson's going to have a lot of fun with him. I just, I would have liked to see a little bit better process here, and especially with the interior defensive line position. Just be better about who you take and when you take them, because they've done this a couple of years, and I can't keep allowing this to happen. So 2.13 for the Chicago Bears. Next up is the Detroit Lions, and I told you at the beginning of this episode, they are near and dear to my heart. I've been a lifelong Lions fan, and so, when you see these grades on the board, know that I am a little bit harsher on my team than I even am, the other teams in the division, because, I put them under a microscope. And so you can see when I have 2 1s in the first 2 rounds, or in the first 3 rounds, that's, it's not great. So we'll start out with the number 1 pick for the Lions, Tyleik Williams, the interior defensive lineman out of Ohio State. And it's not that I don't like Tyleik Williams as a player, because I thought that he was a solid, defensive lineman. I just had him as my number 59th player in the class. And outside of, I believe, Jackson Dart, that was my lowest picked guy in the first round on my big board. And you pick him 30 picks early in the first round, I'm going to have to give that a 1. I just think that, his floor is great, right? You talk about being a great run defender, which he is. That's fantastic. In the first round, I need you to have pass rush upside, and I just didn't see it with him on tape. And, in the past couple of weeks, I've heard the Lions front office and I've heard the coaches say, we think he has pass rush upside, and I'm glad they do, because I just don't see it. I didn't see it when I was watching him at Ohio State. It just felt like, when it was a passing situation, that he struggled to maintain his rush. He stalled out a lot. He didn't really have a plan. I just don't know if he's, a great athletic player in terms of, the get off and the power behind his hands, to be one of those, pocket pushing defensive linemen in the middle of, in the interior. So I just thought that was, a way too early pick for me. And if they would have been able to get him in the second round, or gotten a different interior defensive lineman in the second round, I would have felt much better about it, because even a guy like Alfred Collins, who went in the second round, I had a relatively similar grade on those guys. Vernon Broughton, I had a relatively similar grade on those guys. And Tyleik Williams goes, pick 28, and those other guys fall a little bit further than, where the Lions ended up picking. And then in the second round, they get guard Tate Ratledge, and this was a pick that I saw coming from a mile away. This was a typical Lions pick. He has that Lions-type demeanor. He's got that dirtbag type energy. I wasn't all that impressed with him. And I thought that given, where they took him, I was a little bit disappointed, because the value to me wasn't there. He was like my 95th overall player in this class, and you took him, in the top 60. For me, that's just way too early. I thought that as a run blocker, he left a lot of meat on the bone. He just didn't have the strength to move guys. I was very disappointed with him as a run blocker. However, as a pass blocker, I'm very much intrigued, in his ability to anchor and pass off stunts, and just his acuity, his mental acuity in that realm. But baseline, I need you to be able to run block, and especially if you're being taken in the second round, like that to me is like, you have to be at least a good run blocker, and he's just not. I thought he was average to below average in his run blocking ability. I thought, he gets his wins by using his upper body strength to kind of turn guys. He's not much of a hip user. He doesn't create drive off the ball. And when you get against some of these bigger guys, I just don't think he has the strength to be able to work. And so I'm a little, I'm a little bit disappointed by where they took him. The player's fine. And then one of the worst draft picks in this entire class. And when the Lions made this trade and I saw what they gave up, I was disgusted. And then they take this player who is one of the biggest projects in the entire class. And they take him 70th overall. They traded 3 third-round picks to move up 30 spots to get this kid. A guy who hasn't even had 1,000 yards in 2 seasons at Arkansas. And you can say all you want about quarterback play and usage and whatnot. But Andrew Armstrong put up like 1,200 yards this season. And he goes undrafted. This is another underwear warrior getting picked. He tested out of the phenomenally. And it's not to say that I don't like Isaac Tesla. Because what he gives you is good hands. Like, he's made some ridiculous catches. And a big frame. But I just was not super impressed with, especially for a third-round pick, with his separation ability, his route running, his ability to get off press. Like, there's just so much wide receiver stuff that he needs to develop at the age of 23 to take him in at number 70 overall and trade up as much as they did to do it. It's the worst process I've ever seen. Like, I just don't understand. He was like my 24th wide receiver, and it was a wide receiver that was based off of, I had a 5th round grade on him because of his freakish athletic ability. But the reason I had a 5th round grade on him is because he doesn't show that on tape. He shows good hands on tape. That's it. And to take him where they did, he now has to be, at minimum, a one-time Pro Bowler in his career for this to be a justifiable pick. Because you are not only trading your current third-round pick, but you are trading 2 future third-round picks that are going to be top 100 picks when you have a bunch of contracts coming due that you either need to pay or you need to let go. And if you pay them, that means you need cheap guys on rookie deals. You can't do that if you trade away those picks. Or you're going to have to let those guys walk, which then means you need draft picks in order to replace those guys. They got fleeced. They got fleeced in this deal. Without a doubt. And they also did the same thing with the Ratledge. They traded up 3 spots. They traded a 4th round pick to move up 3 spots. I struggle to see the value there. Like, I don't get it. And then to lose the next 2 third-round picks for next year, and people are going to be like, oh, well, they're next year picks. They are just as valuable as this year. Just because you're making them next year doesn't make them any less valuable. And that's one of the fallacies that we see in the NFL, and especially the NFL draft pick trading. Those picks are just as valuable 3 years down the line as they are in the current year. They are still third-round picks. As you can tell, I'm super frustrated by that pick. I was not a fan of it at all. I was pissed, so pissed in real time. I'm less pissed now, if you can believe it. And then in the 5th round, they went and got one of my favorite interior offensive linemen in this class, Miles Frazier. And they did so in the 5th round. I had a 3rd round grade on him. They did it in the late 5th. So that gets a 5 for me. As a pass blocker, he is one of the best offensive linemen in this class. His ability to anchor and use his hands and has great feet to mirror. He really pass blocks like a veteran. Now, in the run game, he leaves a lot to be desired, and which is why I had a 3rd round grade on him rather than a 2nd round grade on him. Like I said earlier, I want my offensive lineman, if I'm taking you in the top 2 rounds, I want you to be able to, I want you to be good at both things, right? Well, he's great at one thing and then bad at the other. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. As a run blocker, he needs a lot of work. His strength in terms of leg drive is one area that needs improvement. And his hand placement in the run game and, the overall technique, his steps could be better as well. And that's, it's what you have to clean up and what Hank Fraley's job is going to be, because there is a starting caliber guard in this player. Like, at some point in the next 18 months, he is going to be your starter. That is how confident I am in his ability to play the position. Like, I honestly, I feel better about Miles Frazier's upside than I do about Tate Ratledge's upside. Like, that is just how I feel. So fantastic pick. Loved that value there. I think they even traded up to get him too, but it was a much more even trade, and they didn't get fleeced. And then in the 6th round, they get Ahmed Hassanin, the edge rusher out of Boise State. When you talk about a culture fit, this is that guy. He's got a high motor, 150 billion% effort, blue collar worker, bring your lunch pail to work type guy. His story is really cool as well. One of my favorite watches in this class, simply because it was every single play he was by the ball at the end of it, and he's not the most athletic, he's not the most physically gifted or technically sound player. He's relatively new to football, which is why he went in the 6th round. I had a 5th round grade on him though, because I believed that much in his work ethic and his want to be better, that I truly think that this guy is going to be a starter in this league at some point. Maybe starter is a bad word, but I think he's going to be a rotational player, and a good one at that in this league. I don't know if he ever becomes anything above average in terms of his pass rush ability, but as a run defender, he will set the tone, he will set the edge. He is going to be a good player on 1st and 2nd down. He's probably going to have to come off the field, though, on 3rd down. I just don't know if he ever develops that pass rush upside. And then they went and got Dan Jackson in the 7th and Dominic Lovett in the 7th, so they got 2 more Georgia players. Now, Dan Jackson is a special teamer, and I think he's going to be one of those, I think he's going to be a great special teamer. And in terms of safety and what he offers as safety depth, in terms of what he offers as safety depth, even though English is my first language, I still struggle to speak it, what seems like fluently. I don't love Dan Jackson as a safety, I'm going to be honest. I think that he plays super out of control. He doesn't really have an idea of where he's going. He just kind of sees the ball and attacks. I didn't love it, but he's got a great mentality. He's going to hit dudes. He's not afraid of anybody that's bigger than him, which is nice, and why I think athletically he's really good, and so I think he can be a really good special teamer. But as safety depth, it's the 7th round though. I didn't watch him specifically, but I watched enough Georgia games to get an idea of who he is as a player. And then Dominic Lovett, didn't get to him. I was familiar with him when he was, the SEC leading receiver out of Missouri, and then decided to transfer to Georgia and fell off the face of the earth. Had he stayed at Missouri, Missouri has Luther Burden, Theo Weiss, and Dominic Lovett as a wide receiver trio, although you can argue that Lovett and Burden are a little redundant with what they bring to the table. But yeah, maybe you're talking about 3,000-yard receivers with Brady Cook at quarterback. As it is, he hurt himself by transferring to Georgia. Didn't win a championship, but did win the SEC. And I think that as a player, he's an interesting, wide receiver 5. I think he can be a good one because of his ability to be quick and snappy in the short yardage areas. Create some separation for himself, but I just don't see anything long-term, and is a special player. Overall, it's a 2-6. I thought the handling of assets was putrid. That is an area which Brad Holmes is still, the jury's still out there, but I'm leaning towards he just doesn't have a regard for value in his draft day trades. It feels like he's he's undervaluing, future picks just to go get specific guys. And who knows? Maybe that's the right thing to do. But I feel like that process is going to lead you down a dark and narrow road. In terms of the players they got, I'm fine with them. Like, I think in terms of Tyleik Williams and Tate Ratledge, and Miles Frazier, you get 3 players that are going to be floor players for you, at least at the minimum. I think Tyleik's not really a ceiling guy. I think Miles is a ceiling guy, and then I think Tate is a little bit, of a ceiling guy, but not quite as much as Miles. And then with Isaac Tessley, I mean, you're talking about only ceiling. Like, I just don't know what the floor is with this kid. He's a complete projection. And with Hassanin, he's a solid floor guy that's just going to be rotational. He's just, effort. He's going to be your 2-3 deep in terms of your edge position. But every team needs that, right? And that's what you're really taking in the 6th round. Next up is the Green Bay Packers, and they did an interesting job. They took 3 players that I did not watch, so we'll only talk about 5 players here. And the first one being Matthew Golden, and I know that says 110 right now. He was 122. I don't know why I didn't change that. But I really like the pick. I like Matthew Golden as a player. I think that he can be, and I know some people are a little indifferent on this, but I think that he can be a true number 1 at the NFL level, and I think that the Green Bay desperately needed that. They just didn't really have much direction at the wide receiver position. Guys getting hurt and being unreliable. I think Matthew Golden brings both reliability and, just really reliability. Like, that's the big thing. He's going to play, 16, 17 games every season. He's got great hands. He gets open. He's solid after the catch. He's not the biggest body, but you don't need him to be. He's open, with enough space around him that contested catches aren't something that he needs to be great at. So and the need, like the Green Bay Packers finally taking a 1st-round wide receiver, that was phenomenal. Their 2nd-round pick, they took Anthony Belton, and I really liked Anthony Belton. This was just a little too early for me. I think I had a late 3rd, early 4th grade on him. To take him in the late 2nd round, just too early for me. It just is. And in terms of what he brings to the table, I think that he doesn't quite fit the Packers system. He's just a big body. He doesn't move well. He's, however, super strong. Like, we're talking about people mover. He's much more of a gap scheme blocker, a man blocker, than he is a zone blocker, which is why I'm a little bit confused why the Packers took him. But he's got super heavy hands. He anchors really well. Guys they just aren't able to go through him. They have to go around him. And he's got long arms too, big hands. Like, I think he can play tackle, personally. And I would put him at tackle, at least to start. But I think he can play guard too if you try him there and he fails, or if you just have an immediate need at guard. I think he can be a good player. Just a little bit early for me, just because I think he is limited as a run blocker and the type of systems that he can be in. And then the 3rd round, they get your scat back wide receiver playmaker Savion Williams. As a wide receiver, you're talking about the most ups and downs of any receiver in this class. I mean, he'll drop the easiest passes you've ever seen in one breath, and then literally the next play will make a contested catch in which he outjumps 2 guys on the defense and high points the ball, comes down with it through contact, and scores a touchdown. I have no idea what this guy's going to be at the next level, and he kind of reminds me of what they've already had on their team. However, with the ball in his hands, this guy is fantastic. Like, he played Wildcat quarterback. They ran him out of the backfield. He can do it all. In terms of the new kickoff rules, when them moving it back to the 35 or moving the touchback up to the 35, there's going to be a lot more returns. Savion Williams is probably going to be the guy that that does those returns for the Packers. And he's going to be phenomenal at that. Like, he's so fast. He makes guys miss. He's a bigger body. In terms of a wide receiver, he's got a lot to clean up, but there's a good football player in there. And I think the Packers will find a way to use him in a way that makes him successful, makes the team successful. And then in the fourth round, they went and got Barron Sorrell, one of the multitude of Texas defensive linemen that came out. And Sorrell was a guy that kind of flew under the radar in terms of that defensive line. And I thought he was just a steady Eddie. Like, he just did exactly what you needed him to do. He's not this insane athlete. He's not, he is, I would say he's pretty good technically. He's got a little bit of bend, but he's not going to blow you away. He just does exactly what you need him to do. I had a third round grade on him. They get him in the fourth round, the late fourth at that. And that's a 4 to me. Like, that is just a great pick. I think that body type's a little bit different than what we're used to seeing Green Bay go with in terms of their edge rushing position, but I think that he can be an impact player for them. Whether it's in a rotational set or whether it's a edge 2 position, I think he can be a really good player. Didn't watch Colin Oliver, but I am a little bit familiar with his game. He's another edge rusher this time out of Oklahoma State. I am not very familiar at all with Warren Brinson or Micah Robinson. Those two names were ones that I had not heard. But I did, however, watch John Williams, the tackle out of Cincinnati, and I had a 7th round grade on him, or I think it might have been a late 6th on him. And so this is where I would have taken him. They take him late 7th round. But I think he's a solid player. He's going to be a good depth piece for your offensive line. But he's, you don't want him starting any games. So overall, that brings the Packers to a 3-2. I thought they did a good job getting some impact players. Even though I didn't love the value in terms of the Anthony Belton pick, I think that he can be a good player for them, if not this year, next year. And then Savion Williams is a super fun player that, if they find a good way to use him, we could be talking about a special playmaker, the likes of a Josh Cribbs or, Cordero Patterson. Like that's the kind of upside this guy has as a ball in the hands playmaker. And you'll see that the Packers actually have the best grade because the Minnesota Vikings come in at a 2.25. They only had a 5-person class, and I didn't watch Gavin Bartholomew, the tight end out of Pitt, so I don't have a grade on it, to be quite honest with you. And the other picks, the other guys they took, I wasn't a fan of the value. Especially with the first two. Like Donovan Jackson for me was just, it was 25 picks too early. I had Donovan Jackson closer to that 50 spot. And so, just especially when you're picking in the top 25, it's just there are other guys on the board, especially given the fact that they only had the 5 picks. Trading back from this 24 spot would have been a good idea. To accumulate more picks. When you talk about the process, you need as many shots, as many dart throws as possible. And they just didn't give themselves that opportunity. Instead, they've reached on an interior offensive lineman that and I don't know where he would have gone, but I thought there were other interior offensive linemen down the board that could have given you what Donovan Jackson gave you, but at better value. So, and then they get Ty Felton in the 3rd round, and this was one of my least favorite picks of the entire draft because, as low as or as big of a discrepancy as I had between Isaac Tesla and his spot on my big board and where they took him, Ty Felton was picked in the 3rd round, late 3rd round at that, and I had a 6th to a 7th round grade on him. He was outside of my top 200 players. I didn't even think he was the best wide receiver on his own team. I thought Caden Prather was a better wide receiver. And for him to go multiple rounds ahead of him was a little head scratching to me. As a player, I just didn't think he separated well. I didn't think he did much well. I was a little underwhelmed given, what I had seen during the season in terms of watching Maryland football and the plays that he did make. I was like, okay, Ty Felton's got maybe a little bit of a player, but it's the plays that he's not making and it's the plays where he's not touching the ball, he's not getting open. Like, there's a reason that other guy, for some guys, they're not getting the ball because their quarterback doesn't see them, or the pass rush gets. But like with Ty Felton, it felt like he was just not open. Like 50-60% of the time, it felt like guys just blanketed on him. And so I'm very low on that pick. I think they reached drastically on that one. There were probably 20 other receivers on the board. Maybe that's a little bit hyperbolic. Maybe 15 other receivers on the board that I would have taken over him. Prather being one of them. And then they get Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, the edge rusher out of Georgia. He was one of my last watches in this class, and I was pleasantly surprised with his ability. He's got a little bit of bend, something that maybe a little bit's not, because I actually thought I thought he bended well. Is that English? Oh, geez. My brain is currently fried. I thought he had great bend, around the edge, and I thought that, he just needs to be coached up a little bit more. As an athlete, he's not the athlete, but he's a good one. So you just give him some more coaching, get him some more experience, and I think that you're going to be pleasantly surprised with his ability as a rotational rusher, and then possibly be a number 2 on your along your defensive line in terms of your edge rusher. Kobe King in the 6th round is about where I had him. He's just a throwback old school linebacker, cannot cover to save his life, but will absolutely fill that A gap. About as well as anybody in this class. Run stuffer, fantastic, but cannot cover, just doesn't move well. He's not a sideline-to-sideline guy. He's a tackle-to-tackle guy. In a Brian Flores defense, we'll see how that works. Because you're used to seeing, his players be able to do a lot of different things and wear a lot of different hats. I just don't see Kobe King having that ability. Like, he does one thing and he does it really well, but it's a it's a thing in the NFL today that's not super high priority. Even with the resurgence of the run game, it's just teams are not running the ball in a way where you need to have this sort of thumper. He might, because of that, he might not even make the team. And I because he's not a great athlete, I don't see the special teams upside. But I like his ability in the run game, and I think that you can at least get him into camp, given him opportunity. Maybe your strength and conditioning staff can get him, maybe lose some weight, become a little bit more fluid in his hips, and have lighter feet, and you figure something out. But other than that, I don't see much of a future for Kobe King. Talked about Gavin Bartholomew already. And so the 225, it's a small class. I didn't love the class to begin with. It was kind of like the exact opposite of the Tampa Bay Bucks, where I loved everybody in the Bucks class, and there was a few of them, so there wasn't much opportunity for me to dislike somebody. Same thing here with Minnesota. I just didn't love anybody. So you get that inverse there. It brings them to a 225. Fortunately for them, it wasn't the worst grade I gave out in the NFC North, but it puts them in the 3 spot. So if you're keeping track at home, the Packers in that 1 spot in the division, even though it was only a 3-2, still not great. And then the Lions in that 2 spot, the Vikings in the 3 spot, and then rounding it out was the Chicago Bears. So that does it for the NFC North in terms of their NFL draft grades from me and my stupid little brain. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm going to try to really get through these next, what have we done? Next 4 divisions as quickly as I can. I have to do better myself about sitting down and recording and putting together the graphics, because when I do, voila, magic happens, and I'm able to do them in a decent amount of time. But yeah, so be on the lookout for the next NFC video. I believe it's the NFC East is our last one, and then we'll finish out the last 3 divisions in the AFC. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Catch you on the flip. See ya.